Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you're not some royal prince or travelling merchant. You're just another body in a damp stone cell, waiting for someone to remember you exist and then regret it. You were born into a world where justice is a rumour, guilt is a mood, and pain is the closest thing to divine attention you'll ever receive. You don't know why they've come for you. No one ever really does. Maybe someone pointed, maybe someone prayed, maybe they just needed a warm spine to stretch. Doesn't matter now. You've been accused, and that's the hard part. Everything after this is easy. It just hurts more. Before they drag you into the chamber, before the iron bites and the rope creaks and the smell of someone else's fear gets under your nails, do me a small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. If you'd like early access, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable, and remember, no one is coming to save you. Let's begin. You were never safe. Not in your home, not in the market, not even in the church, especially not there. You weren't protected by your innocence, or your obedience, or your faith. Those things might have kept your neighbours quiet for a while, but they couldn't save you once someone with power decided they wanted something you had. Your land, your labour, your silence, or your body. And they always did, eventually. No one in your world is truly free. Not from hunger, not from disease, and certainly not from suspicion. You might think you're not the kind of person this happens to, but there is no kind of person. You're not a criminal. You're not a rebel. You haven't broken any laws, at least none that you knew existed. You go to mass. You keep your head down. You only steal what you need, and only from the people who would never miss it. But that's not how it works. Medieval justice isn't about crime. It's about convenience. You are convenient. Maybe it's the priest. You didn't tithe enough this year. You traded grain under the table. You questioned something he said about purgatory, or the sun moved through the window at the wrong time when you looked up. It doesn't take much. He has the ear of the magistrate, and the magistrate has debts to settle. Or maybe it's the baker's daughter. She smiled at you last week, and now her father can't stop staring, and you can't stop thinking, and someone in that triangle is going to break first. Or maybe it's simpler. Maybe your neighbour just wants your well. The idea that you'll be accused is almost generous. There's no grand trial announcement, no parchment nailed to a door, no robed official knocking politely with questions and a quill. Most of the time, it starts with a whisper, then a stare, then your name being spoken in a tone that suggests it's already too late. There are places in your town you can't walk without someone crossing themselves. Children start avoiding your doorway. The dogs act differently. You hear your name in places you weren't. And still you try to explain it away. You tell yourself, it's just gossip, that people have always talked, that if you keep quiet and stay useful, it'll pass. But in this century, things don't pass. They fester. You live in a world where rumours grow legs, where silence is suspicious, and where fear moves faster than truth. You could be accused of heresy, witchcraft, theft, adultery, blasphemy, or just looking like someone who might do one of those things someday. It's not about what you did, it's about what you represent. Instability, defiance, failure to belong. There are courts technically, but you won't be seeing one until you've already confessed. The process is inverted. The punishment comes first, the confession is extracted, and the trial is just theatre. It's meant to look like order so people don't realise they're living in chaos. The clergy keep the records, the lords keep the weapons, the torturers keep the peace. It's a tidy system, if you're on the right end of the iron. You aren't. Power doesn't need a reason here, it just needs a moment. And if someone with authority happens to be bored or angry, or vaguely inconvenienced by your existence, that moment is already on its way. Maybe they want to make an example of someone. Maybe they're hunting witches this month. Maybe they just need to prove to the town that God is still watching. You'll do fine for any of that. You're poor. You're quiet. No one important will come to your defense. No one ever has. You might still be thinking there's some way out. That if you just keep your head low, avoid attention, be useful enough, nothing will happen. But usefulness is temporary. Loyalty is cheap. And when people are afraid, they reach for names like stones. They throw whoever they can to the fire, hoping the smoke won't blow back on them. You know this. You've watched it happen. You even nodded along once or twice, relieved it wasn't you. You didn't ask where the miller's son went. You didn't ask why the seamstress stopped speaking. You just hoped it wouldn't be your turn. But it is. You've made it this far, sure, through famine and frostbite and infection and whatever passed for childbirth in your part of the village. But none of that was personal. This is. Someone has spoken your name in the wrong room. A priest has looked at you and seen doubt. A lord has looked at your house and seen property. The wheels are already turning. You won't hear them, of course. You'll hear nothing until the knock comes. When it does, you won't be ready. You'll ask what you've done. They won't tell you. You'll protest. They won't listen. You'll try to run. You'll fall. And somewhere, someone will nod and say that justice has begun. But it hasn't. Because in this world, justice is not a goal. It's a performance. And you, lucky you, have just been cast. It happens at night, of course. It always does. Not because there's any particular strategy to it. Not because the darkness provides cover, or because the hour lends authority. No, it's just because that's when you're most vulnerable. You're tired, your family is sleeping, the fire has gone out, the door is unbarred, and besides, what better time to remind everyone else that the Lord does not sleep, even if it stinks of ale and unwashed feet. You hear them before you see them. Boots in the mud, dogs barking in the distance, and the low clatter of iron against iron. You sit up, heart pounding, still hoping, foolishly, that they're just passing by, but they're not. They stop. You don't get a knock. You get a kick. The door flies open and slams against the wall, with a noise that makes your bones flinch. 3 men step inside, maybe 4. They don't introduce themselves. They don't need to. Their uniforms are whatever was clean. Their weapons are blunt from overuse. Their expressions are already bored. You ask what's happening. They ignore you. You ask again, louder this time, more desperate. One of them grabs your arm. Another strikes you in the stomach. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to make sure you stop talking. You double over, coughing, and they take that as permission to drag you outside. Your feet catch on the threshold. You fall into the mud. One of them laughs. It's raining, because of course it is. Your clothes soak through in seconds. The cuffs go on your wrists, and they're tighter than they need to be. Painfully so. You're not supposed to be comfortable. Your neighbours hear it. They always do. That's the point. Windows open, doors crack, faces peer out, just far enough to catch a glimpse, but not far enough to be implicated. You see them watching you. The woman who sold you onions, the boy you gave a broken toy to last winter, the old man who blessed you when your wife died. None of them say a word. None of them will remember this correctly. If pressed, they'll say they knew it all along, that they saw something in your eyes, that you smelled wrong, that the signs were there. And you? You're still asking questions. You're still clinging to the idea that this is a mistake, that someone will realise it, that someone will stop it. You try to explain, you plead, you say you're innocent, but they're not listening. The men holding you don't care. Their job is not to verify guilt. It's to fetch bodies and deliver them to places where the guilt will be extracted, drop by agonising drop. They're not concerned with your story. They've heard dozens. They forget them by morning. The idea of a warrant is almost laughable. Warrants are for people who write letters, people with seals and family crests and opinions about Latin grammar. You are not such a person. Your arrest comes by word of mouth and weight of boot. A local bailiff may have nodded. A priest may have murmured something suggestive. A lord may have needed to prove he still had teeth. That's more than enough to set things in motion. And of course it has to be public. The spectacle is half the sentence. They want your neighbours to see your face twisted in panic. They want your body dragged, not escorted. They want your screams to echo between the houses. Not because it helps your case, well you don't have one, but because it helps keep everyone else in line. Fear is the only thing keeping this century from eating itself alive, and your suffering is today's donation to the cause. As you're dragged through the streets, your knees scraping stone and your arms bruising against iron, the crowd begins to gather. Slowly at first, then more. Some recognize you, some don't. It doesn't matter. You're no longer a person, you're a story now, unfolding in real time. The drunkard in the alley nods knowingly. The merchant mutters that he always had a bad feeling about you. A child points, a dog barks. The men pulling you along spit and laugh, and throw the occasional insult like seasoning. They do this often. You're just meat. Eventually you reach the edge of the town square. There's a cart waiting. You're thrown into it like a sack of something less valuable than grain. You land hard, your shoulder cracking against the wooden boards. You can't breathe for a moment. Then you can. Then you wish you couldn't. The guards climb up behind you. One kicks your leg, not out of necessity, just to remind you that you're not allowed to be still. You pass the church on the way out. You catch a glimpse of the priest who gave your daughter her last rites. He does not look at you. He blesses the guards. By the time the gates close behind you, your clothes are soaked, your face is bleeding, and the questions have dried up in your throat. You're not even thinking of what comes next. You're just wondering how long you'll have to sit in your own blood and rainwater before you're allowed to move again. But that's the wrong question. The right question is, how many pieces will they have to break you into before they get what they want? And the answer is always the same. As many as it takes. The cart stops eventually, not because anyone tells you where you are or what comes next. That kind of information is for people with choices. It just stops. One of the guards hops down, stretches, spits, and then grabs your leg like he's hauling a pig. You're yanked out and dropped into the mud again. Not so much unloaded as discarded. Your knees give out. Someone curses at you for wasting time. You're lifted by the arms and dragged toward a door set into the side of a stone wall, so dark and so wet it looks like it's been crying for years. The door creaks open, you're shoved inside. The smell hits first like a wall of rot and damp and something worse. It smells like mildew, yes, and old food, but also like meat, not cooked, not fresh, not even properly dead. Just meat, left too long in a place where no one cared. You gag. One of the guards laughs and says you'll get used to it. He's wrong, but he's also not staying. Your new home is not a cell in the clean, cinematic sense of the word. There are no neat little bars with shafts of moonlight falling through. There's no dramatic corner to sulk in. What you get is a pit, a dugout hollow beneath a crumbling stone structure, held together with the stubbornness of medieval masonry and generations of bodily fluids. The floor is stone, sort of. Mostly it's a slurry of old straw, mouse droppings, and the flattened remnants of meals that were either thrown in or thrown up. You have no idea where the walls end and the mould begins. They shove you forward, and your foot catches on something soft. You look down. It's a blanket, maybe, or it was once. Now it's a flattened mat of slime and lice. You don't want to sit on it, but you don't have another option, so you do. Slowly, carefully, you pretend it's just dirt, that it doesn't squish, that it doesn't move. There's no toilet. That will become relevant very quickly. There is a hole in one corner, about the size of your head, with a smell that suggests it once had a purpose and was long since abandoned. You'll be using it soon enough, assuming the rats let you. Yes, there are rats. They don't wait for nightfall. They don't care if you're watching. They don't run away when you shout. This is their home. You're the intruder. You look up and realise the ceiling is low enough to touch. It drips, constantly. You don't know if it's rain or sewage or condensation off someone else's suffering. It doesn't matter. It gets into your clothes, it slicks your hair, It makes your skin feel like it's being peeled from the inside. Every inch of this place is designed to remind you that you're no longer part of the world above. There's light, technically, a single torch wedged into the wall by a bent iron hook, flickering in a way that makes you wonder how long it's been since anyone replaced it. The shadows it casts are long and twitching. They make the room feel bigger than it is until you try to stand and immediately hit your head. You sit again and try not to scream. If you're lucky, you're alone. If you're less lucky, there's someone else already here. Maybe two, maybe more. It depends on how long they've been forgotten. One might be asleep, one might be dead. It's hard to tell. No one talks much. No one asks questions. Everyone here has the same answer. I didn't do anything, but that stopped mattering a long time ago. Hygiene, in the traditional sense, does not exist. You'll start to smell after a day. After two, you'll stop noticing. Your skin will itch. Your gums will bleed. Your hair will become a nest for things you don't have the energy to fight. Your fingernails will turn black at the edges. You'll try to clean yourself with water that pools near the wall, but it's green and viscous, and something lives in it. You do it anyway. The guards don't check on you much. When they do, it's not to ask how you're feeling. They open the grate above the stairwell, shine a light in, and maybe toss something down. A piece of stale bread, a bowl of broth that smells like it came from the parts of a cow no one should touch. If it lands upright, you eat. If it doesn't, you scrape it off the floor with your hands, and try not to swallow too many teeth. Time stops working. You don't know if it's been a day or a week. You sleep when your body forces you to. You wake when the rats get bold enough to nip. You start talking to yourself, then you stop. You hear things that aren't there. You miss sounds like wind and footsteps, and anything that doesn't echo. Eventually, you hear someone scream. Not near you, far off. Maybe another chamber, maybe behind another wall. It's high and shrill and human, until it's not. Then it's just a noise. You don't know how long it lasts. You try to count the seconds, then lose track. You sit in the dark and press your hands over your ears and tell yourself it's not important, that it won't happen to you, that someone will figure this out. But deep down, in the part of you that's still honest, you already know the truth. The scream wasn't a warning. It was an introduction. And you're next. You're expecting something to happen. That's the worst part. You thought they'd drag you in right away, beat the answers out of you, demand a confession, and move on. But they don't. They leave you there, alone or nearly so, with your back pressed against damp stone, and your ears full of the kind of silence that isn't quiet at all, the kind that hums just beneath hearing, like the inside of your own skull has started whispering. You start to realise that pain isn't the first step here. Waiting is, and it's worse. Time doesn't work down here. You try to keep track, counting the drips, the footsteps, the slivers of light if there are any. You lose the thread by the second day, maybe the third. Your stomach aches, then twists, then gives up entirely. Hunger becomes a kind of fog. You forget what full feels like. You forget what warm feels like. Sleep comes in fits, broken up by the cold, the rats, and the occasional scream drifting through the stone walls like smoke. Sometimes it's close, sometimes it's not. But it always sounds the same. Stretched, wet, and endless. No one talks to you. That's part of the design. If there are others, they've already gone quiet. You wonder if they were ordered not to speak, or if they just stopped bothering. Maybe both. You try once, murmuring something to the wall. Maybe a prayer. Maybe just your name. And a guard hears. He doesn't come down. He just shouts for silence, then bangs a stick against the iron grate, until your ears ring. You don't try again. Your mouth dries out, your lips crack, your tongue feels like it's wrapped in cloth. You get water sometimes, a bucket lowered by rope, just enough to keep you from dying inconveniently early. You sip it like it's precious because it is, and because if you drink too fast you'll vomit and waste it. You learn quickly, everyone does. Eventually, your body stops resisting. The hunger becomes dull, The filth becomes familiar. You learn the sounds of the dungeon, the scurry of vermin, the groan of stone under shifting weight, the slow shuffle of someone being dragged across a floor. You know the difference between a moan and a sob, and the moment when both of them turn into something worse. You tell yourself not to listen. You listen anyway. You imagine what's happening whether you want to or not. Sometimes the torchlight flares, and someone is taken. You don't know who they are. You don't know if they come back. You tell yourself you'll be ready when they come for you, but you won't. No one is. That's the point. They leave you here just long enough to break something softer than bone. The dreams are the worst, not nightmares. Those at least end. These are half dreams, fevered, directionless, crawling through your brain like smoke. You see faces you don't recognise. You hear your mother's voice, only she's weeping and you don't know why. You see your own hands doing things you can't control. You wake up screaming into your own arm. Then you stop doing that too. Hallucinations come next. Small at first, a shape in the corner that shifts when you blink. A breath behind your shoulder. You swear someone touched your foot once, but there was no one there. Then the voices come, soft, reasonable, even kind. You know they're not real. That doesn't help. Sometimes they tell you things. Sometimes they just hum. Once one of them asked if you were ready. You didn't answer. And then the silence breaks, not all at once, just a sound, a click, a groan, the scrape of something heavy against stone. You freeze. Every muscle in your body goes still because this is it. You're sure of it. They've come for you. But they haven't. Not yet. It's someone else again. You hear them whimpering, then sobbing, then screaming. The walls shake with it. You listen to every note of that voice being torn apart. You swear you feel it in your teeth, and then silence, not because it's over, just because they've run out of sound. This becomes normal. That's the horror of it. You stop reacting. You learn to fall asleep to agony, like it's rain on a roof. It doesn't make you heartless, just numb. You can't hold space in your brain for both survival and empathy, so you let one go. And it's not survival. You start forgetting things, names, places, the smell of clean linen, the way light looks in spring. You try to remember your daughter's laugh and get the pitch wrong. You forget what your wife called you when she was angry. You forget your own voice. You begin to suspect that if someone did open the door right now and ask who you were, you wouldn't have an answer ready. And worse, you're not sure you'd care. This is what they want. They don't need to whip you raw to get a confession. They just need to make you forget that anything else ever mattered. They want you hollowed out, quiet, obedient, and above all, ready. And when the time finally comes, when you hear boots on stone, and the key turn in the lock, and the chains rattle just outside the door, you'll feel something strange. Not fear, relief, because at least the waiting is over. The door opens. There's no ceremony, no shouted name, no guard giving you a moment to brace, just metal scraping stone and light slicing through the dark. Your eyes can't adjust fast enough. You flinch, blinking, already trying to stand even though your legs haven't carried weight in days. You don't get the chance. Hands grab you, not gently, and haul you upright like you're something broken being dragged to the refuse heap. They say nothing. You say nothing. There's no need for introductions. Everyone knows why you're here now. You're taken through narrow corridors, lit poorly and built for things heavier than men. The torchlight flickers on walls scratched by more than just time. You smell old blood and something else. Burned leather maybe, or roasted meat, except nothing's cooking. No one tells you where you're going. You're not offered water, not even a dirty cloth to wipe your face. You stumble once and someone behind you hits the back of your knee with a staff. You don't fall again. When they bring you into the chamber, you try not to look at anything too closely. It's easier that way. The shapes on the walls, the stains on the floor, the things that gleam in the corner, they all mean something and none of it is good. The room is smaller than you imagined. That almost makes it worse. No distance, no escape, just stone, sweat and judgment. The man sitting in the chair at the far end of the room is dressed well, Not richly, but cleanly. He has the look of someone who still gets hot meals and sleep. His robes are tidy, his eyes are not. He doesn't speak right away. He just watches you, takes you in, like he's reading a ledger, not a person. Finally, he gives a small nod. Then the questions begin. They're simple at first: your name, your profession, your parish, your marital status, the names of your family. You answer. Of course you do. These are safe questions, familiar ones. But then he asks where you were 2 nights ago, who you spoke to, what you said, whether you've ever consorted with anyone who doubts the church, whether you've ever questioned the sacraments, whether you believe in transubstantiation, whether you've ever heard a voice that wasn't yours, whether you've ever seen a woman smile at the moon. You hesitate. That's enough. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't accuse you. He just frowns slightly and makes a note on a piece of parchment. Then he gestures. The guards step forward and bind your hands tighter. You try to speak, to clarify, to protest, to beg. But the inquisitor holds up a single finger and says, "We will return to that." And now you've learned a valuable lesson. The questions don't matter. Only your hesitation does. They keep asking. The questions twist and circle. They repeat things you already answered, but slightly differently. They ask why your neighbour's dog barked at you, why you were seen near the woods, why the priest's wine cellar was short 3 bottles last month. You say you don't know. That's not the right answer. You say you weren't there. That's worse. You say it's a mistake. Now they're convinced. The inquisitor is not here to determine if you're guilty. That part has already been decided. He's here to help you admit it. You're not being investigated. You're being processed. Your words are not evidence. They are decoration. Something to pad the scroll when your confession is written up and sealed. And yes, written up, not written down. You won't be doing the writing. That's for the clerk, who scratches away at the edge of the room, never looking up. He writes what the inquisitor says you said. Not what you actually said, not what you meant, just what fits. If you disagree, you're welcome to file a protest, with your teeth nailed to a plank. Your answers are weighed not by truth, but by tone. Sound too defiant, and they call it heresy. Sound too eager, and they call it deception. Pause too long, and it's seen as defiance. Speak too quickly, and it's guilt. There is no correct rhythm here. Just a narrow path of perceived obedience that you're already falling off of. Eventually, the inquisitor sighs. He looks disappointed, as if you've failed a test he generously let you cheat on. He waves a hand, and the guards pull you upright. Your wrists scream. You can't feel your feet. You try to ask what happens next. No one answers. What happens next is the beginning of what they call encouragement. You'll be returned to yourself for now, left in the dark with the knowledge that nothing you said helped you, that every word you spoke might have made things worse, that your silence would have been interpreted just the same. You're starting to understand what everyone here eventually learns. The goal was never to prove your innocence. It was to wear you down until you admitted something, anything, that could justify what they were going to do anyway. This was not your trial. That comes later, maybe, if you're lucky. This was the part where they ask questions they don't want answered and wait for you to fail in how you answer them. You did, and tomorrow they'll try again, with better tools. They don't call it torture. Not here, not now. That word belongs to the future, to people with dictionaries and human rights. What you're about to endure is called encouragement, a firm and loving nudge toward truth. Your truth, their truth, the truth that best fits the narrative already written on that parchment in the inquisitor's neat, detached handwriting. You won't be asked again. Not really. Now they'll make you answer. The room is different this time, colder, more open, and full of things that don't belong in any room built for human comfort. Hooks, chains, screws, tables that tilt, chairs with straps. There is wood. There is iron. There is fire. Nothing here is sharp. Not yet. Sharp cuts are merciful. The tools of encouragement are designed for pressure, for twisting, for splitting and warping and separating things that were never meant to be parted. They start small. The thumb screws are simple, a metal vice, heavy and unforgiving. Your hands are placed inside, palms up, fingers splayed like a child, begging for grace. One guard turns the screw, slowly. At first it's just pressure, like holding something too tight. Then it builds. The bone protests, the skin stretches, the pain becomes sharp, then hot, then blinding. You think it can't get worse, you're wrong. The screw keeps turning. They only stop when the bone gives, when your thumb cracks with a noise that feels like it comes from inside your brain. You scream. They nod. Progress. Next comes the heretic's fork. It's not a fork in the way you understand it. No tines for food. This is a metal rod with 2 prongs at each end, placed between your chin and chest, or between your throat and sternum. It's strapped tight, so tight you can't nod, can't sleep, can't move your head an inch without stabbing yourself. You're made to kneel with it in place, and then they leave you like that. For hours. For as long as it takes. If you sag, it stabs. If you collapse, it pierces your throat. If you cry, it cuts. Eventually, your body starts to fail. Your neck spasms, your eyes twitch. You stop crying, not from strength, but because it's too dangerous. Then there's the iron boot. It sounds almost poetic, doesn't it? It isn't. It's a solid metal casing, heated by fire and clamped around your lower leg and foot. At first, you think you can handle it. It's just heat. You've walked barefoot on hot stone before, but then the metal warms, then it burns, then it cooks, your skin bubbles, your nerves send up a scream that your mouth tries to match. You kick, or try to, but there's nowhere for the pain to go. It pulses upward, through your spine, into your teeth. And still, they wait. They ask you a question. You say yes, even if you don't understand what they said. They don't write it down. They just keep going. Eventually, you're introduced to the rack. You've heard rumours of it. Everyone has. A table with rollers at each end, ropes tied to your wrists and ankles. You're laid down on it, gently, almost respectfully, like someone preparing a table for slaughter. The crank begins. You feel it in your joints first, a tug, then a pull, then something gives. It's not immediate. The rack is slow. That's what makes it effective. You don't die on the rack, you come apart on it. Inch by inch, tendon by tendon. Shoulders dislocate, hips slip, knees twist. Your limbs stretch beyond what you thought possible. You scream until you can't. And still, they ask the same question, over and over, like a hymn. No one's writing anything down at this point. No one needs to. They're not here for your words. They're here to see what it takes to silence you forever. Not physically, not yet, but mentally. They're testing thresholds, measuring how much of your body they need to ruin before your soul gives up too. And they're good at their jobs. They've had practice. Sometimes they pause, offer water. They lift a cup to your lips like they care. Sometimes the inquisitor steps in, hands behind his back, looking disappointed. He asks if you're ready to speak clearly. You are. Of course you are. But you don't know what to say. You've forgotten the accusations. You've forgotten your name, so you nod, or you try, and they begin again. This process isn't chaotic. It's not a frenzy. It's ritual. Every tool has its place. Every movement is deliberate. Every act has precedent. They aren't torturing you in rage. They're torturing you in faith. The faith that suffering reveals truth. And if it doesn't, then at least it reveals weakness. And that too is useful. By the time they stop, not because they're done, just because the schedule says so, your fingers are ruined, your legs are scorched, your joints are undone. You're laid on the floor like waste. No one meets your eyes. No one calls you by name. You're not human now. You're raw material. They drag you back to your cell, one limb at a time, and leave you in a puddle of your own pain. And even now, you wonder if maybe, This means they believe you. They don't. They call it the water cure. That's the joke. As if it's healing. As if it's treatment. As if anything that leaves you choking on your own breath and retching up half your soul could be described with a word like cure. But words are flexible things in this place. Mercy means something else here. So does truth. So does death. You're dragged back into the chamber, barely upright, joints still screaming from the rack, legs uncooperative, mouth cracked and dry. You think briefly that they've already done enough, that your silence should have been enough, that the broken fingers and blistered legs and blood in your throat meant something. They didn't. They never do. There's always another method, always another way to ask the same question. You've already answered 100 different ways. This time it's water. They tie you down again. Not to a rack this time, to a board, slanted. Your head is lower than your feet, tilted back so that your throat stretches and your chest is exposed. Your hands are bound at your sides. Your legs are locked at the ankles. They press something rough and scratchy, cloth maybe, or thick linen, across your face. You can still breathe, for now. You're grateful for that. Then the picture appears. It's just water. That's what they'll tell you later, if you live long enough to speak again. Just water, nothing sharp, nothing heated, nothing cruel. But you learn very quickly that cruelty doesn't need fire or steel. Sometimes all it needs is gravity. The first pour is manageable, surprising even. The cloth soaks instantly, and the water slips into your mouth, down your throat. You choke a little. You try to breathe around it. You try not to panic. But that's the thing. The panic isn't optional. It's built into the process. Your body doesn't understand the word interrogation. It only knows drowning. They don't stop after the first pour, or the second, or the 10th. Water floods your throat, fills your nose, overwhelms your lungs. You can't breathe. You try to cough, but the cloth stops your mouth. You try to scream, but it comes out as a wet gurgle. Your body begins to convulse, fighting the restraints, every muscle seizing with the desperation of a man whose only sin is needing air. There's no rhythm to it, no signal when the next pour begins. They wait just long enough for you to hope it's over, and then they start again. Each wave of water crashes into your lungs like a tide. You feel your belly swell, your chest tightens, your heart begins to pound in your ears. You think you're going to die. You wish you would. The worst part isn't the choking, it's the instinct. Your body wants to live. It will do anything to survive, betray you, lie for you, beg through gasps you didn't mean to form. Your mind is breaking, but your body doesn't care. It just keeps thrashing, struggling, humiliating itself in front of men who aren't even watching with interest anymore. This isn't shocking to them. It's routine. Eventually, your stomach gives up. You vomit water, not food because there is none left. Just bile and brine and the taste of mouldy linen. It sprays through the cloth, dripping onto your chest, mixing with the filth already there. You try to turn your head to the side, to avoid choking on your own sickness. They keep it fixed forward. You're not allowed to move. You're not allowed to protect yourself. You lose track of how many times it happens. Your body trembles, your vision blurs, your hands are numb, your lips are chewed raw from the gag. Your stomach is a stretched, bloated drum, pulsing with pain and trapped air. Your sinuses burn, your lungs wheeze, every breath tastes like rot. At some point they pause, maybe to refill the jug, maybe because someone asked a question, maybe just for fun. You lie there, gasping through the dripping cloth, your body soaked, your mouth full of bile and regret, your head spinning. They ask you a question. You don't understand the words. You say yes anyway, or you try to. The sound that comes out isn't speech, it's noise. They accept it. Waterboarding, that's what future generations will call it. They'll debate whether it qualifies as torture. They'll hold hearings. They'll write memos. They'll argue over definitions. But here, in this century, there's no debate. It is what it is. And it works. Because people talk. They say anything to make it stop. They confess, they beg, they accuse others. They fabricate whole conspiracies just to breathe again. You are no different. They remove the cloth slowly, like it's a favour. You suck in air too fast and vomit again. You're crying, though you don't remember starting. One of the guards wipes your face, not kindly, just practically. The inquisitor glances down at you, notes your broken state, and declares this session productive. You've learned something important. It doesn't matter what you know. It only matters what you'll say, with a lungful of liquid shame. They untie you. You don't move. Your limbs aren't working. They drag you back, slumped and leaking, a skin full of silence and spit. And now you understand. Fire burns, steel cuts, but water? Water lingers, water teaches, water remembers, and you will too. The second time on the rack is different. The first time, your body still believed in its own structure. It resisted, it screamed, it clung to the idea that your arms and legs were meant to stay where they were. This time that illusion is already cracked. Your limbs know what's coming. They don't fight, they tremble. You're dragged back into the chamber. You try to walk, but your legs no longer understand commands. Your feet flop like wet cloth. One of the guards curses and slings you over his shoulder like a sack of spoiled grain. The movement jostles your stomach. It hasn't stopped aching since the water. When they lay you on the rack, you're already groaning. Not from fear, not yet, just from the memory of pain. That's something new. Pain that remembers itself. The rack is familiar now. You hate that. The wood smells the same. Old blood and grease and something earthy underneath, like rotting straw. You recognise the grooves where the ropes dig in. You notice scratches on the side that could be fingernails or could be teeth. You don't want to know. The ropes are tied again. Ankles and wrists, snug and careful. Precision matters here. It's not about brute force, it's about slow, calculated unravelling. They begin with calm efficiency. One man turns the crank. Another holds your shoulders down. A third watches your face. The inquisitor sits back, fingers steepled, as if this is a lecture, and you're the demonstration. The first pull is almost gentle, a firm tug, enough to alert the tendons that this is happening again. Then it tightens, gradually, deliberately, with no urgency. That's the cruelty, not the pain itself, but the patience behind it. Your joints start to protest immediately. Shoulders first, then hips, ankles twist, knees strain, elbows stretch past what anatomy allows. Your spine begins to arch, your mouth opens, and you think a scream will come, but instead there's just a rasping exhale. Your lungs are still recovering from the water. You have no air to spare, just pressure, just pain. And then one of your shoulders gives out. A soft pop, barely audible, but you feel it like thunder. The socket dislocates. Your arm goes limp from the elbow up, still attached but no longer aligned. It's not numb, it's worse than numb. It's the absence of function. The inquisitor makes a note. Not about your suffering, about your progress. They don't stop. The crank turns again. Your legs are next. The tendons behind your knees scream as they stretch beyond reason. You can feel the tearing, not all at once, but in layers, like cloth ripping slowly. Then your hips shift. One side pops free. You don't know which. The pain is everywhere now. Your back, your chest, your neck. Your vision flickers. Your jaw trembles. You want to pass out. Your body won't let you. You lose track of time. The pain has no rhythm now, no structure, just waves crashing through your nerves. Your fingers twitch involuntarily. Your head rolls to the side. You're drooling. You hear yourself whimpering like a child. Someone asks a question. You don't hear it. You just nod or try to. They crank again. The rack doesn't aim to kill, that's important. If they wanted you dead, they'd have done it already. The goal is ruin, not blood, disfigurement. They want you broken, not shattered. A dead body is a failure. A mangled body is a message. One that limps, one that stinks, one that trembles in the courtroom long enough to say, Yes, before being carted away. Your arms are longer now, not metaphorically, literally. The joints have slipped. The ligaments have torn. Your muscles have stretched. If you ever walk again, it will be sideways. If you ever lift your hands, it will be slowly, with pain, and not far. You will never be whole again. And they are not finished. Eventually, they stop. Not because they've run out of motivation, just because your body is at its limit. Any further, and you'll tear completely. They don't want that. They want you conscious, breathing, and aware of your new shape. They untie the ropes. Your limbs fall like meat. You don't even feel the floor when they drop you onto it. You lie there twitching, one shoulder grotesquely higher than the other, one leg twisted slightly inward. You try to speak. No one asks you to. The inquisitor stands. He tells the guards to clean up. Not you, the floor, your blood, your spit, your sweat. They leave you in the corner, sagging against the stone like a broken puppet. You learn something in that moment. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream, a kind that doesn't move or flinch or beg. It just exists, quiet, heavy, permanent. It settles in your bones and decides to stay. You're not being punished anymore. You're being changed from a person into something else, something useful. They don't bring it out right away. The pear isn't for just anyone. It's special, not in the sense of rarity, but in the sense of purpose. Most of the tools they've used so far have been about leverage, extension, exposure. The rack stretches, the thumb screws crush, the water fills. But the pear enters, quietly, personally, intimately. It's not meant to break bones. It's meant to break dignity. You're on the floor when they mention it. You can't sit up on your own anymore. One of your shoulders still hangs loose, and your legs have gone soft in ways that feel permanent. But you're awake, and that's all they need. The inquisitor tells you, almost casually, that more precise measures are required, that you've been resistant, that you've been withholding, and so they'll open you up. That's how he phrases it. Not a threat, not a punishment, just a fact. They bring the device out on a cloth. It's not large. That surprises you. Just a handful of dark, burnished metal, shaped roughly like a pear, narrow at the top, bulbous at the base, with 4 curved petals that taper to dull points. There's a screw at the stem, a crank. No edges, no blades, nothing that looks especially deadly. Which is the point. It's not made to kill you. It's made to violate. The guards handle it with an almost ceremonial quiet. One holds it, one cranks it open. Slowly, the petals widen. What was once a smooth shape becomes a spreading bloom of iron. Not much, just enough to stretch whatever it's inside past what skin and muscle are meant to allow. When fully open, the petals form a crude star, jagged and rigid. It's not beautiful, but it's memorable. They don't tell you which opening they'll use. That's part of the fear. Maybe the mouth. Common for liars, for blasphemers, for those accused of speaking against the church. Maybe the vagina, for women accused of adultery, of witchcraft, of improper behaviour. Or maybe the rectum, often chosen for those who needed to be humiliated as much as hurt. They don't explain the reasoning. You're no longer part of that conversation. You're just the recipient. They choose your mouth, probably because you've spoken too much or too little. Probably because they still want you to answer something later. They force your jaw open. You resist, but weakly. Your muscles are gone. Your body is exhausted. You can't even form a sound beyond a strained grunt. The pear goes in slowly, awkwardly. It scrapes your tongue. The metal is cold. The shape feels wrong immediately, like swallowing a fruit with a bone inside. Then they begin to crank. At first, it just presses against your teeth. You can feel the strain in your jaw. Then it widens. Your mouth stretches. Your tongue is trapped beneath the metal. Your cheeks balloon. The crank turns again. The pear expands. You can feel tendons tighten in your neck. Your eyes water. Your jaw begins to pop at the hinge. They pause, ask if you're ready to talk. You try. The sound that escapes you is wet, incoherent. It gurgles in the back of your throat, choked and bubbling. They call it defiance. The crank turns again. The corners of your mouth split. You taste blood. Your jaw is now fully unhinged, nerves screaming every time the metal shifts against your teeth. You don't scream. You can't. If they keep going, and some did, the damage becomes permanent. Jaws broken, teeth shattered, throats torn. In rare cases, the device would be inserted farther back, tearing into the soft palate, choking the victim until unconsciousness followed. That's not the goal today. They want you broken, not gone. Eventually, they reverse the crank. Not all at once, slowly, with care. Your jaw collapses inward. Your tongue falls limp. You can't close your mouth. You try to swallow and fail. The pain doesn't stop just because the metal's gone. It lingers, swelling in your gums, echoing behind your eyes. You're drooling, slumped, humiliated. You hear one of the guards mutter that it could have been worse. That's true. That's always true here. The real horror isn't the device itself. It's the way it's used, selectively, symbolically. It's not about confession. It's about intrusion, about reminding you that no part of you is private anymore. Not your thoughts, not your words, not even the dark, silent hollows of your body. They can reach into any of them. They will. Later, if you live long enough to see your own reflection, your mouth will never quite close the same way again. Your speech will slur. You'll bite your own tongue when you chew. Your smile, assuming you ever smile again, will tilt awkwardly. People will ask what happened. You'll say nothing, because even in a world this cruel, some things are too obscene to retell. And they'll nod, because they already know. He smiles at you today. That's the first thing you notice when they drag you into the chamber again. Not the tools on the wall, not the flickering torchlight, or the old blood dried in the grout, but his smile. It's small, polite, maybe even sincere. The kind of smile you used to give the village priest after Mass, when you didn't have bread, but nodded anyway. Except now, the man smiling at you isn't offering peace. He's offering purpose. Your suffering is going somewhere, and he wants you to be proud of that. You're seated, not strapped down. That's new. Your legs barely hold your weight, and your arms dangle at strange angles, but the absence of immediate restraint is more unsettling than comforting. The inquisitor doesn't rush. He doesn't bark orders. He paces slowly, hands folded behind his back, as if delivering a lesson, and in his mind, he is. This is his classroom. You are the pupil, and pain is simply the curriculum. He begins by asking if you slept, not cruelly, not sarcastically. He seems genuinely curious. You don't answer. You can't. Your jaw still throbs from the pear. He tilts his head slightly, studying your silence like a doctor examining a symptom. Then he nods as if confirming a theory. You're doing well, he says. Progress even. You don't know what that means, but you know it's not about healing. He sits across from you, careful to keep his robes from touching the filthy floor. His boots are clean. His hair is combed. His voice is soft, deliberate. He asks if you're ready to confess. You open your mouth and nothing comes out but air and the faint rattle of a throat that's been screaming too often. He waits. Then, smiling still, he says, "You must understand, this is for your salvation." And the terrifying part is, he believes it. He's not a sadist, not in the way you'd hoped. You wanted him to be a monster, a lunatic, someone you could blame without complication. But no, he's worse. He's devout, steady, rational. Everything he does is rooted in conviction. He believes that what he's doing is right. That pain purifies. That confession heals. That the soul must be wrung out like a cloth until the sin drips clear. He didn't invent this system. He inherited it. The manuals, the methods, the rhythms of questioning and breaking, they were all passed down to him like scripture. He probably apprenticed under another inquisitor. learned which tools bruised and which ones broke, which questions opened the mind and which silenced the mouth. He knows how long a body can last without water, how many turns of the screw it takes before bone shatters, how to spot the moment when a person stops resisting and starts complying. This is his craft, and he is very, very good at it. He doesn't scream, he doesn't threaten, he doesn't need to. The threat is implied in every quiet word, in the way he lifts a tool from the table and sets it down again without comment, in the way he nods solemnly when you sob or wet yourself or fail to answer. He's not angry with you, he's disappointed, and somehow that's worse, because he genuinely wants your confession. Not just for the record, not just for the court, but for you. In his mind, your soul is sick, infected, dirty with lies or pride or lust or whatever invisible ailment they decided you carried. And if you would only admit it, fully, freely, then healing could begin. You would be washed clean. You would be spared eternal fire. You might even, in his view, be saved. That's why he smiles, because he thinks you're getting closer. Every scream, every broken joint, every ruined muscle, he sees these as signs of progress. He believes that your body is shedding its resistance the way a snake sheds skin, that each moment of agony brings you closer to spiritual clarity, that your suffering is not only justified, but necessary. He asks again if you're ready to confess. This time, he doesn't even wait for a proper answer. He reads off a list: heresy, sacrilege, fornication, theft, witchcraft. He watches your face for flickers of recognition, for the slight flinch that might mean guilt. He's practiced in this. He knows how to tell the difference between pain and shame, or thinks he does. You nod, or twitch, or drool. It's not a confession, but it's enough. He smiles wider now. He says that's good, that we're making headway. That truth is on the horizon. Then he gestures to the guards and says, "You'll continue tomorrow." Rest is part of the process, he explains. The soul must be allowed to recover before it's pierced again. You're dragged back to your cell, bones dragging behind you like a sack of wet wood. And you can't stop seeing that smile, that calm, clerical smile, the look of a man who genuinely believes he's doing you a favour. And maybe he is by the logic of this world. Maybe this is kindness. Maybe this is love. And maybe that's the scariest thing of all. You don't remember saying it. Not clearly. You remember being asked again and again the same litany of accusations in a voice that never changed tone. Theft, heresy, impurity, consorting with devils, insulting the sacraments, wishing harm upon the king, each one asked like a prayer, spoken slowly, patiently, as if repetition would wear you down more effectively than the pear or the rack or the water ever could. Maybe it did. There were days, you think, or maybe it was only one. Time has no weight anymore. Everything bleeds together into a slurry of pain and fire and pleading. You remember blood in your mouth. You remember being too exhausted to cry. You remember the inquisitor asking again, "Do you confess?" And you said something. A grunt, a nod, a half syllable wrapped in spit. Not a name, not a detail, just a sound. But it was enough. They didn't ask you to elaborate. They didn't press for clarification. The moment it left your lips, that weak, formless whisper of defeat, the inquisitor sat back in satisfaction, nodded to the clerk, and declared your confession complete. Not a confession in the modern sense, not a statement, not a list, not even a full sentence, just a noise interpreted as guilt by people who came into the room already believing you were guilty. The process wasn't meant to extract truth, it was meant to reach a conclusion. The clerk, who never once looked up from his ink-stained parchment, began to write faster. You watched him out of the corner of your eye, hands moving like he was copying scripture. He wrote what the inquisitor said you said, not what you actually said. Not the broken syllables or the babbled nonsense or the names you might have cried out in delirium. The confession was already written. He was just filling in the blanks with ink and authority. No one read it back to you. You wouldn't have been able to understand it anyway. Your jaw was swollen, your hearing was shot, and your mind was a dull echo chamber of unfinished screams. You slumped where they left you, still bound at the ankles, head hanging loose over your chest. Someone poured water into your mouth. You coughed half of it back up. Someone else wiped your face with a dirty cloth that smelled like wine and rot. That was the mercy portion. The inquisitor stood, hands folded in satisfaction, and told you that your soul could now begin to heal, that the truth had set you free. That confession had broken the devil's grip. You couldn't tell if he was mocking you. He didn't sound like it. He sounded genuinely pleased, like a teacher congratulating a student who finally mastered his lessons. It would have been funny if your ribs didn't hurt so much when you tried to laugh. They call it voluntary. That's the term used in the records. You gave your confession freely, because you were technically conscious, because no blade was held to your throat in that final moment, because you were not actively screaming when you croaked that broken syllable. Therefore, you chose to confess. Therefore, the process worked. The logic is airtight if you ignore everything leading up to it. You're taken back to your cell with slightly more care than usual. Not because you're respected now, just because you're valuable. You've crossed a threshold. You're no longer a suspect. You're a confessed criminal, a heretic, a liar, an enemy of God. Your status is elevated, not upward, but inward, into the system, into the machine. The next steps are just formalities. The confession will be delivered to the proper authorities. It will be copied, stamped, archived. No one will ever question how it was obtained. No one will ask whether the confession included real details or names or motive. No one cares. You confessed. That's the only line they'll read. You lie on the stone in your cell and stare at the damp ceiling, trying to remember what you said. You can't. It's lost somewhere, between the blood loss and the hallucinations and the moment your shoulder popped free of the socket. You wonder if it was your own name you gave up, or someone else's. You wonder if you confessed to things you've never heard of, if you accused others, if you damned your own family, if you cried out to God. You don't know, and you never will. The words are gone. They were taken from you like everything else, squeezed out of your throat and rewritten into someone else's version of the truth. And now, in the eyes of the church and the law and every record that will survive you, you are guilty. Nothing else matters. They call it a trial. That's generous. You're loaded into a cart like firewood before dawn, barely conscious, body wrapped in whatever scraps they found lying near your cell. You can't walk. Your legs gave out days ago, and even if they hadn't, they wouldn't risk letting you stand. You'd collapse halfway there and bleed on someone important. That's not the image they want for the crowd. The sun stings. You haven't seen daylight in what feels like weeks. Your skin, pale and cracked, reacts like it's being scalded. Your eyes water instantly. You squint, but even that hurts. Your hands are bound in front of you. Wrists raw from the last round of restraints. Your mouth is swollen, your jaw loose, your lips blistered from dehydration and the pear. You couldn't speak if you tried. Not that anyone will ask you to. They pull the cart through the square slowly, on purpose. You're the entertainment today. People gather. Some cross themselves. Others whisper. A few laugh, not cruelly, just curiously. Children point. Someone spits. You don't respond. You couldn't even if you wanted to. You're barely holding your head up. You slump forward as the cart creaks through the cobbled street, body jostling with every stone, every rut, every casual cruelty built into the road itself. The courtroom is just a converted chapel, rows of wooden benches, high windows with stained glass saints frowning down on you, a raised dais at the far end for the magistrate, a table for the clerk, another for the church officials. Everything smells like wax and mildew. The ceiling is tall enough to echo, which it does, especially when they announce your name, in a tone meant to sound righteous, but lands like a funeral bell. They drag you from the cart and dump you onto a stool. You're too broken to resist. You slump forward, hands shaking, breathing shallow. A priest approaches and flicks water at you. "Holy," he says, though it smells like old copper and mould. He mumbles a blessing. You don't understand the words. You're not meant to. The inquisitor is already there, standing beside a clerk who's holding your confession. It's been copied onto clean parchment, inked carefully, decorated at the edges. You wouldn't recognize a single word of it, but that doesn't matter. It's official now. It's yours. Your name is written at the top. That's all anyone cares about. A magistrate enters next, robed, bearded, wearing a tall, ridiculous hat that seems to imply wisdom through circumference. He doesn't look at you, not once. He takes his seat and begins the proceedings by thanking God for truth, for order, for justice. Then he gestures for the reading to begin. The clerk reads your confession aloud. It takes several minutes. It's more detailed than anything you remember. It includes specific acts, motivations, even entire conversations you never had. It names accomplices. It describes intent. It builds a case. A full, elegant narrative, carved from pain and imagination. You hear your own name paired with heresy, perversion, witchcraft. At one point, you think they say you communed with animals. At another, that you plotted to poison a priest. It hardly matters. You try to speak once, not out of defiance, just confusion. Your voice comes out in a hoarse rattle. Everyone ignores it. The clerk continues. The inquisitor stands and explains that the confession was obtained without duress, that you were treated with fairness and care, that your soul had been corrupted, but was now partially cleansed. He says this with the smooth, confident cadence of a man who's repeated the same speech 100 times before. Then the magistrate turns to the priest for a final blessing. The priest steps forward, lays a hand on your shoulder, and declares you guilty, not just in law, but in spirit. He speaks of repentance, of God's mercy, of the cleansing power of punishment. He assures the room that your sentence will be a mercy to you and a lesson to others. You don't react, you barely register it. Your vision is a blur, your hearing is fading. But you catch one word, again and again, guilty. The verdict isn't decided in that room. It never was. It was written the moment someone whispered your name in the wrong ear. This trial is just for show. A religious theatre performed before God and neighbours to give the illusion of process. There was never any chance of freedom. No advocate, no defence, no burden of proof, just the echo of your own broken voice, played back through someone else's pen. They declare the matter resolved. The magistrate rises. The clerk seals the parchment. The priest murmurs another prayer. And you? You're dragged back out into the daylight, eyes burning, muscles twitching, stomach curling inward from hunger and dread. The trial is over. You lost before it began. You don't choose how you die. That decision's already been made, not by a court, not by God, by a man in leather gloves who gets paid to make it quick, or not. The executioner? He's not a priest. He's not a judge. He doesn't care what you confess to. His job isn't to weigh your soul, just your body. He looks at you like a craftsman looks at wood. Bent here, split there, already soft in the joints. Useful in some ways, but ultimately disposable. Most towns only have one. If you're unlucky, yours is ambitious. He takes pride in his work, has preferences, rituals, maybe a special axe, maybe a favourite platform. You're not a person to him. You're material, a body to be displayed, broken, dismantled for the benefit of the crowd and the conscience of the state. He's not cruel necessarily, just experienced, and after enough years of cleaving heads from necks and tying ropes around necks and lighting fires beneath screaming men, something dulls in the eyes, or sharpens, Depends on the man. There are options. They won't tell you which one it'll be until the morning of, if they tell you at all. Burning is common, especially for heresy. Fire purifies, they say. It lifts your sins to heaven in smoke, or at least that's what the sermons claim. Really, it's about spectacle. Flames make for good theatre. People gather early for a burning. Whole families come. Children sit on shoulders. Vendors sell bread and stew. It's a social event. And there you are in the centre, tied to a post, skin blistering before the wood even catches. You don't scream for long, but you do scream. Hanging is cheaper, quicker. If the rope's cut right and the drop is clean, your neck breaks instantly. If not, if it's too short, or the noose is placed wrong, then it's slower. You twist, you kick, your face swells, your bladder loosens, you jerk until you stop. That's the budget option. The default, for petty thieves and the poor. For people, no one will remember. Beheading is cleaner if the blade is sharp and the hand steady. That's a big if. Sometimes the first strike doesn't do it. Then there's a second. Sometimes a third. The executioner steps back, readjusts, wipes sweat from his brow, while the condemned groans or gurgles or tries to crawl away. The audience watches politely. Then it ends. A cheer if the crowd's in a good mood. A silence if the executioner made a mess of it. There's also breaking on the wheel, but that takes time. Days sometimes. Reserved for traitors, rebels, people who need to be made examples of. The wheel is laid flat, and your limbs are arranged across it like spokes. Then come the strikes, each one meant to shatter a bone. One for each arm, each leg. Then again, to make sure. They keep you alive sometimes, tie you to the wheel vertically, and let the crows work slowly. It's not efficient. But efficiency isn't always the point. If they really want to make a point, there's flaying. Rare, but not unheard of. The skin is peeled back with blades, inch by inch, while you're still alive. It's not quick. You won't die right away. You'll faint, then wake, then faint again. The pain returns in waves, each worse than the last. Eventually, your body gives up, but not quickly, and never cleanly. And sometimes it's crushing. Stones piled slowly on the chest, each breath harder than the last, ribs groaning under the weight, visions swimming, mouth foaming. You suffocate under the pressure, staring at the sky, too weak to beg and too angry to stop trying. They say it's for justice. Really, it's just heavy. Whatever method they choose, it's never private. That would defeat the purpose. This isn't just punishment, it's performance, it's theatre for the living, a warning carved in flesh. That's why they parade you through the streets beforehand, so people can see what a condemned man looks like, so they can cheer or sneer or pray louder than usual, so they can feel clean by comparison. And most do cheer, not because they hate you personally, they don't even remember your name. They cheer because it's not them. Because they've been watching the Inquisitions get closer to their homes, to their neighbours, to their own doors. They cheer because fear has to go somewhere, and applause is easier than honesty, and because someone told them that seeing a man die for his sins makes the town safer, holier, more blessed. They want to believe that. You'll hear the noise before you see the scaffold. The crowd murmuring, shuffling, shouting, children laughing, someone arguing about line placement, someone selling meat pies. You'll smell sweat and ash and anticipation. And then you'll see the platform, or the stake, or the rope. You'll see your own grave, built above ground. And standing beside it, waiting like a butcher with too much time on his hands, is the executioner. He has a preference, and today it's you. There's no procession, no candles, no bells, no priest walking solemnly with incense swinging from a chain. When it's over, however it ends, fire or blade or rope or wheel, they don't wrap your body in linen or lay you gently in a casket. No one sprinkles holy water on your chest or prays over your remains. You're not escorted to sacred ground. You're not even given a hole. You don't get a grave. Instead, they haul you onto a cart, the same kind they use for garbage, manure, butcher scraps. Your limbs are twisted, charred, or crushed depending on the method. Doesn't matter. The body doesn't need to be whole to be disposed of. You're dead, and more importantly, damned. At least in their eyes. That changes everything. A proper burial requires sanctity, and you lost that somewhere between your confession and your sentence. Now you're something else. Waste. Outside the town walls, beyond where the market ends and the roads grow uneven, there's a stretch of ground no one speaks about directly. The soil is rocky, nothing grows well. The air smells faintly of old ash and rot. That's where they take you. It's not a cemetery, it's a dumping ground. They call it unconsecrated land. A place for heretics, excommunicates, suicides, strangers, and the executed. People whose souls aren't worth the church's trouble. Your body is dumped unceremoniously into this field, or into a pit if they're feeling organised. Sometimes it's a communal ditch, a tangle of limbs, some fresh, some half sunk into the earth. Faces already unrecognisable. The crows are patient. They've seen this before. They watch from the crooked tree line, waiting for the cart to leave. When it does, they descend in silence. They start with the eyes. Worms come next. They don't need an invitation. They arrive early, burrow deep, make themselves comfortable. You won't feel any of this, but someone might pass by in a week or two, maybe looking for kindling or lost sheep, and catch the smell. They'll hold a sleeve to their face and walk faster. They won't look too closely. They'll tell themselves it was probably an animal, and they'll be right in a way. Your name fades quickly. It's not written anywhere official, not on a tombstone, not in a parish record, at least not with the dignity given to the innocent. The execution might be recorded, yes, a date, a method, a charge, but not the man. Not the family you left behind, not the person you were before someone pointed and called you dangerous. Your name becomes shorthand for a warning, or vanishes entirely. No one visits the place they put you. Not out of fear, out of futility. There's nothing there. No marker, no altar. Just dirt and silence, and the slow churn of decay. Your family, if you had any left, won't be allowed to reclaim you. To do so would be seen as questioning the verdict, as inviting suspicion. They'll cry in private, if they cry at all. They'll speak of you carefully, if they speak of you at all. And eventually, they'll stop. The church says you forfeited the right to burial when you chose sin. The magistrate says it's policy. The neighbours say nothing. And the dirt says nothing too. It takes you in without protest. That's the one kindness left. Medieval burial customs are full of meaning. For the faithful, a good death is a passage. You're wrapped in cloth sprinkled with holy water, buried facing east to await resurrection. Bells are rung to ward off evil spirits. Prayers are spoken to guide your soul. Your grave is blessed, maintained, visited. It is a place of memory. You get none of that. You don't face east. You don't lie in peace. You rot wherever your body landed when they shoved you off the cart. Your soul, they say, is lost. Maybe wandering, maybe burning, maybe just gone. That's not their problem. It's not yours anymore either. You're not a lesson anymore. You're not a person. You're meat, bones, fodder for the ground. And the town, it moves on. The same day even. There's bread to bake, streets to sweep, markets to haggle in, children to scold. People shake their heads and say things like, such a shame, or they should have known better. But soon enough your name becomes harder to recall. Your face becomes blurred in memory. What you said or didn't say fades entirely. All that's left is the story, that someone was taken, tried, punished, and that it worked. They'll say peace returned, that justice was done, that God was satisfied, and the field outside the wall, that forgotten patch of cursed land, will take you in without comment. One more body among many. No one will come to light a candle. No one will write an epitaph. The worms will not read your confession. The crows will not remember your face. And in the end, that's all that survives of you. Nothing. You like to think it was about you, that your pain had a reason, that somewhere, deep beneath the blood and bruises and broken joints, there was some larger purpose to all of this. Justice, maybe? Redemption? Correction? But it wasn't. It never was. You weren't punished to be understood. You weren't hurt to be healed. You were dismantled to be seen. Because that's what punishment is in your world. Not a path to truth, not a tool of reform, but a warning carved into flesh. You were not selected for your sins. You were chosen because someone needed an example, and you were close and quiet and weak enough to be made into one. All the rest, the accusations, the rituals, the confession, was just staging. The real sentence was delivered the moment someone realized how useful your suffering could be. They never cared what you did. They cared what you looked like after it was done, the way your screams echoed through the chapel, the way your family fell silent in church, the way children clutched their parents' hands a little tighter when they passed the gallows. That's what mattered. You were a performance, pain as policy, horror as hygiene. This is the part they never explain when they talk about justice, that it was never about righting wrongs. It was about holding the line between fear and rebellion, between obedience and chaos. Every town has its stories, its boundaries, its rules whispered in the marketplace and passed along like recipes. Don't walk alone. Don't speak out of turn. Don't question the tithe. Don't ask why the inquisitor smiled when he touched the wheel. And most importantly, don't end up like them. That was your real role. Not a defendant, not a criminal, not even a soul to be saved. You were a cautionary tale, a set of sounds and images designed to remind others what happens when they forget their place. You were not meant to survive. You were meant to last. In memory, in rumour, in the quiet fear behind someone else's eyes. Even the way you were broken had meaning. A hanging speaks to one kind of disobedience. A burning speaks to another. Flaying, crushing, dismemberment, each one is a different kind of sermon. The body becomes a language. You just weren't the author. You were the ink. People will remember the event. They always do. Do you remember the time someone was burned for heresy? They'll ask. Do you remember the man who screamed when they broke his legs? They'll recall the flames, the sound, the look of it. But not the name, not the details, not what led up to it. They'll get those parts wrong. It doesn't matter. Accuracy isn't the point. Fear is. You won't become a martyr. That takes politics. You won't become a legend. That takes poetry. You'll become a shape, a whisper. The story someone tells their son when he asks why no one ever talks back in church. Because they'll do to you what they did to him. That's what they'll say. That's what survives. And the ones who did it to you, the inquisitor, the magistrate, the priest with the shaking hand and the steady voice, they sleep just fine. They call it duty. They tell themselves that pain is sometimes necessary, that your execution was a service to God, to the community, to the future. Maybe they even believe it. Belief is easy when it keeps your hands clean. But you know the truth now. You weren't a problem to be solved. You were a message to be delivered. They didn't need your guilt. Just your silence. Just your body, twisted and bound and useful in its ruin. And now that it's done, now that the trial has passed and the crows have done their work, and the dirt has taken you in, there's nothing left to correct. The show is over. The lesson has been taught. No one will visit the field outside the walls. No one will say your name aloud. No one will wonder what might have been different if someone had just listened. Because in the end, you were never the point. The system wasn't built to protect people like you. It was built to show what happens when it decides not to. That brings us to the end of tonight's story. Not of justice, and certainly not of redemption, but of a body broken to make a point. Of a name erased so others might remember the fear more clearly than the face. If you're still awake, thank you for staying with me through a world where guilt was optional, suffering was scripted, and silence was the only defense that never worked. If you'd like early access to future stories, ad-free audio of these episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. You can also like, subscribe, or leave a comment about which forgotten punishment, lost place, or unquiet grave you'd like to visit next. And if you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find these stories. Sleep well.